Welcome to the Green Scene with Marianne DiMascio. We're here today to talk about the Plymouth County Hospital and the grounds where we will be planning a park. And I have with us today two consultants from the Conway Graduate School of Design. We have Elan Mills and Alison Maurer. Welcome. Thanks for coming here today.
Thanks.
So they're from the Conway Graduate School of Design, and they're working as consultants to us. And I'd also like to say I'm also going to put on my hat of being on the final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee. There have been a couple of committees over the years to look at ways that we can reuse the 55 acres over there. And we've been on the committee looking at all different options, and the one piece that we're moving forward on right now, and we've gone to the selectmen and to the town meeting, is to propose a park on a portion of that land. So welcome, and would you like to say a little bit about what your role is and a little bit about Conway School of Design?
Great. I'm Alison. I am finishing up this graduate program at the Conway School in East Hampton, Massachusetts. This school is sort of a unique opportunity in graduate studies to work with real clients and real sites. So it's such a pleasure to be able to really get in on the ground with a project like this and get to know the town of Hanson and also this particular property. So we get to both understand the issues of a site, the things the town cares about and is concerned about, and then develop a design based on really a lot of analysis. The school is focused on analysis-based design, systems thinking, sustainability, both for ecology and for humans. And so we bring all of that together and create a proposal for the town to move forward with. Yeah.
Great. We're glad you're here. And Elan, would you like to say a few words also?
Yeah, I'm Elan, and right now we're kind of in the infancy stages of this process with the former hospital site. We're still in the analysis phase. We've just finished a few conceptual designs. So it's a very loose phase that we're in right now, and we're looking at more of the function of the designs rather than the details. And the town thus far has had really passionate feedback, and they showed up with a lot of people at our last community meeting, and we received a lot of information that was very helpful for our design process.
Great. Great, and we're very glad that you're here. We've been working on this committee for a while now, and there's just so much that's possible. And we looked at many, many different ideas, and we kept on coming back to the idea for this park. People in the town had given feedback saying there's not a place that we have here in Hanson, so there's a lot of excitement about this. So could you say a little bit about how this all started? So I know we had a contract, or town administrator, after getting approval from the Board of Selectmen, signed a contract with Conway. What was the first step? How did it present to you, and what was the first thing that you were out here doing?
Yeah, I mean, this is our third term. We've been working on this just for a couple of months now, and we got, sort of handed this project, took some time to get familiar with it, and then we're able to come out and visit with the committee, see the site. And it was an awesome day. We spent 5 hours or so hanging out with the committee, hearing all sorts of stories about, Hanson, people boating on Wampatuck Pond as kids, and then also about the long legacy of this property, which is amazing and just gorgeous. And we both feel very fortunate to get to work on this beautiful site.
Yeah, after our first meeting, we were really energized just to see the amount of interest that the town had in this site and the potential for it. And then after visiting, it's just an incredible site, and the history there is pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm. So. And what struck you about let's say one thing about the property and about some of the history in either way?
Yeah.
Well, I think the old hospital site just had very interesting architecture. The bones were incredible. So it's unfortunate that it's gone, but I think we can kind of use that formal design in our designs potentially. And then the topography of the site is really fascinating because it sits on a drumlin. So there's some really interesting lowlands that we can use in the design, and the vegetation patterns are pretty interesting. And there's been a lot of disturbance on the site because of the demolition of the hospital, but I think we can use that to our benefit and use some of the fill to do some really interesting things with the terrain.
Yeah. And just to go back one little step, what's a drumlin?
A drumlin, so essentially it's an upside down spoon, basically, and that would be the land formation, and it's created by glaciers. So a glacier moving over it and then coming back, and then it deposits a lot of glacial sand and gravel, essentially.
So you're saying the whole property is a drumlin?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's
The whole
why
body
there's
Learned
is-
something new already.
There's that little crest, and
Yes.
you know that we have the benefit of this small high point in town, which is great.
That's right, the highest point in Hanson.
You're right.
And anything that struck you about the land?
I mean, what's great is that you have 55 acres of really a range of different types of spaces. So, you know, the meadows in the north are their own kind of character and have their own feel, and are, you know, lovely and open and cozy spaces. If you can have open and cozy spaces at the same time,
Right,
they
right.
really feel that way. And then there are these wooded paths that lead up there, and there are these beautiful areas in the woods that, you know, where you have some steep hillside, but that looks out over, you know, this like beautiful flat open forest, and then out onto the reservoir and cranberry bogs to the east. And then you have this huge open space where the hospital used to be that's just lovely, and, you know, just feels like there's such potential in this space for, you know, an area that is really used and beloved by residents of Hanson and maybe other
Yes.
towns as well, hopefully nearby. Yeah.
We can really see why there's so much interest in the site, because it is a very just powerful experience being in this open area where the site was. And there's still some, you know, remnants of older structures on the site.
And we've had a lot of people talk about Whitman, which is the town next to Hanson, where they have this park that was actually, I believe it was designed by Olmsted. And they're like, Whitman has this great park. We, you know, would like to have something like that in Hanson. So I hear that comment a lot. So you came out for the day, you spent time with the committee. I know I was away that day, so I didn't get to be there, but the town administrator, were there some other people there also?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had, you know, committee members, but also just some folks from the community that showed up and gave us some feedback from the get-go. So,
Right, people love to talk about that site. And the other thing that's really interesting is, and we'd hope to tap on this somehow in the process, you know, in addition to having a park, we'd like to really be able to talk about the history and have people tell their stories. And there's so many people that said, oh, I was a candy striper there. Oh, I used to work there. Oh, such and such a parent or family member were in the hospital. So we'd also somehow along the way like to capture some of that, not necessarily in the design, or maybe it is, but also then just be able to have people, events where people share stories.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what was next? You came, you heard, you spent 5 hours, you went back, and what did you do next?
Yeah. We spent a bunch of time looking at the site itself, thinking about the ecology of the site, you know, everything from drainage to circulation. So who's currently using it? Thinking about the 2 old entrances that are no longer used.
And that's
then-
one on Pierce
Exactly.
and Ave and one on High Street, the second one
yeah.
on High Street.
Yeah, that old
Okay.
beautiful gate that is no longer used on High Street. And so we do all of this analysis and then pull that together and start designing from that research that we've done. And so we're about 2 weeks into design or so, and thinking about large design concepts, not at the final design details yet, but really still thinking about what kind of character people want in this space, the relationships of different functions, what types of programming, you know, do you want a pavilion? Do you want a dog park? All of these kinds of things that we were able to hear about in our first community meeting. So we're starting to piece all of those things together. Yeah.
Okay. Do you want to add anything, Elan?
No, just I think from that initial community meeting, we just learned so much, and they were able to do a design charrette and actually have something interactive, and it was really interesting to listen to the town go back and forth, and listening to people from the community present their ideas, and not looking at a pavilion as a pavilion, but more its function. And it was really fascinating to just listen to the feedback among, like, when we actually just were away from the conversation and just listen in. It was very impactful, I think, for us.
Yeah, it was a very lively night also. You set it up really well. And just for the listeners at home, we had the meeting at the middle school, walked in and sat down at different tables. And on the tables, there was a big plan, or is that what you would call it, a plan of the
Yeah.
the site with markers and stickies and everything ready to interact. So then you gave a short presentation. We split into groups, and you had some questions about do you remember what the question was? What would you like to see in a park, or what would you like to do, or
Yeah.
And then we just sat. Some people drew, some people made lists, some people. It was very interesting to see. I think there were 7, 8 groups or so, and then you gave everyone a chance to present.
Yeah.
So what were some of the specific things that you remember from that evening that stuck in your mind?
Yeah.
Well, I think just the creativity of Hanson
Yeah.
and the passion. I mean, you never know the ideas that will come out of those, and some people I think feel restrained or overwhelmed when you give them a map and just tell them to write something down or draw something. But it was incredibly creative across the board. I mean, I don't know if we expected some of those designs to come out, and then I think we're definitely implementing it moving forward, which is cool.
Yeah. Everything from, bat boxes to pathways with information about native plants to an area for a beer garden or, food trucks or a farmer's market, pavilions, certainly a wide range of different types of activities. The main thing that felt really clear was that people are excited about having a park in town and a space where they can gather and, host events and sort of come together in the middle of town.
Right. Yeah, there were great ideas that night,
Yeah.
and there were a bunch of ideas that were very similar. So there was this group that was like saying some of the same things. There were some saying, "Let's not do so much," and then there were other groups that are saying, "Let's do everything." So I imagine you're falling somewhere in the middle there, between those extremes. So I'd also like to say that I know part of the project is not looking at. I think it's about 22 acres where there's this long path, maybe half-mile long, that goes out to 2 different meadows. That is likely to stay in that form so that we have this walking path and we have these 2 meadows. So did you look at the rest of the land up there for your project?
Well, we've been, you're referring to the northern portion?
Yeah, the northern portion.
Right.
Yeah, we've definitely been looking at it, and it's such an asset to include and ensure that it's under some sort of conservation because it is so important to the site. Those meadows have really rich habitat. Even some of the invasive plant species that are in that area harbor a lot of cover and forage habitat, which is important. So moving forward and saying that we don't need to omit all these plants and seeing how they can benefit the ecosystem will be important for us. But we just see that area as being a huge asset to the entire 55-acre site.
Right.
Yeah.
And there is one spot at the end in the meadow where there's a connection to the water. Did you look at that at all?
Oh, yes.
Or was that outside your purview?
Yeah, we're thinking about it, certainly. I mean, it's a great opportunity for the town to connect both to this site and also to the boat launches and other areas. Our main design focus for right now is really on that southern area where the old hospital used to be.
Okay.
So we're keeping it in mind, and we're excited for that to be part of the design proposal that we give to the town when we're done. But a lot of that is going to remain, relatively close to what it is right now. It does provide so many great, more relaxing, quiet, nature trail experiences in that northern area. And I think that access to the lake is going to be one of the beautiful assets of that site to take advantage of.
We love the idea of thinking of taking a boat over from
Yeah.
Town Hall,
It's
stop
great.
there, get out through the meadow, have your picnic, walk around. So
Right.
some great ideas. So let's get to the design. So at the second meeting, you presented your designs and got more feedback.
Yeah.
Can we talk about those designs?
Great. Yeah.
You have 3.
Sure. Yeah, so we have 3. Each one has a pretty different approach to what type of park-like space this could be. So the first one is really a fairly low-maintenance version of a park that is emphasizing more nature trails, creating wide open meadows in that park space. So instead of what you might think of as a really traditional park, this would be a more kind of flowery, beautiful, natural experience that would allow people to kind of gather and hang out in this open park-like space. And would be a little more on the low impact side, both ecologically and also for implementation. So we're taking advantage of some of the assets on the site in this design, like an old maple alley, and bringing people into the woods through this old maple alley, trying to create, there's a row of old maple trees that's kind of been grown in, and clearing that off so that your entry into the property is through this beautiful old space that takes you down to the chimney, which is left over from an old building there. And such a lovely relic of what used to be on that property.
Right. And can I say one thing about the Maple Alley? We had volunteer students at a day of service, the National Honor Society, and a bunch of the sports teams came out, and they helped clear that Maple Alley because it was completely overgrown. They helped clean up a bunch of things. But it was nice to see that appear. I hadn't realized it was
It's a
there.
beautiful spot.
Yeah.
So
that's design one.
It also includes taking advantage of the woodsy areas, the sort of slopes that run north to south that look over the lower woodland grove and the reservoir and the bogs. We're thinking about what it would be like to put in some kind of amphitheater in that space, so that to have events or some kind of gathering space in the woods, so that you're bringing people into this forest in a way they maybe aren't accessing at this point, at least on this site. I know there are other great woodsy areas in Hanson, certainly.
We have Camp Kiwanee is one. Okay.
That's design one.
All right, design one.
Design two is more recreation based. So we really looked at what the town recommended after our first meeting, and we tried to place a lot of those concepts or things that the town gave us in that first meeting into one design. We weren't able to get a lot of them, but we tried to at least establish the features or the functions that they have. So on a scale of impact to a site, it's greater than the first one. But I think it achieves a lot of the goals that the town would like. There's more parking. A lot of people want a playscape for children. More areas that are ADA approved, and this design really incorporates a lot of that. And it still uses the assets on site, but there's an extra a spiral mound which we look to take some of the fill that's on site and use that as a feature, and so people would essentially have a promontory, and they would be able to look throughout the landscape on this spiral mound, which would be next to a playscape. So it'd be a different way to look at play, and that could be like a multi-generational play feature on the site, and we're pretty excited about it. It's perhaps something that would definitely need to be phased long term, but we thought it would be an interesting thing to at least propose or for the town to look at.
Great. And there a play structure, playground also in that one?
Yes, the playground would be essentially to the east of that spiral mound, and then this would have a dog park and a larger picnic area near these really large pines that provide a pinch in the landscape in between the village area and the park. So it'd be kind of using the
village area. You're calling that over where the
Bonnie
food
house.
Pantry and the Bonnie house is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. I should say also that the one idea for the town was to, there's a historic structure called the Bonnie House, and there's been some talk of getting some of the older, smaller structures that are down on Route 27 and bringing them up. It's like an old schoolhouse where the Historical Society is, so to have a little spot, and that's what you're calling the village? Okay, I like that name. Yeah. And just before we get to number 3, I'm also thinking that we have to figure out what to call the site, and I think that could be something very interesting to do townwide, have some kind of naming contest, because every time I talk about it, it's the former Plymouth County Hospital grounds. You know, what is the future that we're calling this to? So
that's a great point.
It'd be interesting to see that. So anything else about 2?
Well, I would say access. It explores more areas to actually access the site, and that's going to be important moving forward since there are some closed portions of the site that we could use. And if we're going to accommodate more people and we'd like more people to visit this site, we're going to need to look at that. And we obviously don't want to make a huge impact by enhancing parking, but we tried to do it in a graceful way, so it's kind of parking isn't the main feature on site.
Right. I mean, people, as much as you want people to come by commuter rail or ride their bikes or walk, people are also going to be driving, so that we do have to have parking there. And one of my wish lists was an electric vehicle charger, so maybe that will be in your design.
We'll keep that in mind.
All right, so number 3, what's different about that one?
Number 3 is pretty distinct in that we are thinking about what it would be like for this space to be a more formal memorial to the hospital, for it to have a real historic feel to it. The old foundation of the hospital is gone, but certainly we know where that was. So in this design, we are considering what it would be like to create some kind of foundation, raised platform over that old foundation, so that when you enter that southern portion of the site, you can actually see just in the ground where the building was, and then having the park kind of expand out from there. So this one has a bit more of a garden feel, less of like a recreation park feel. It has a loop surrounded by trees that you could spend time either in the center of it or in these small gathering spaces around it. And each one could have its own, native garden theme, perhaps with some educational trails throughout it. But that really the southern area becomes a real kind of memorial to what was there, and to the loveliness of that old building. I know lots of people were attached to that building and were sad that it was so beyond repair that it couldn't be preserved. And so, kind of honoring that legacy and that love for what was there and the stories that were there. Obviously, that would be kind of in tandem to any kind of historic area up by the Bonnie House in that village to the north. But creating kind of a thoughtful, contemplative space there in the south for you could have events in the center of this loop pathway that could be playful and fun still, but that there is also kind of a lovely memorial feel to it.
Great.
Yeah.
And I would say each design is different. We have like essentially Venn diagrams for each, and some of them completely close off the village area from the recreation or the park, and some integrate the village with the park. So we're looking to see how to do that in a tactful way where the site still functions and we're able to honor the history of the site. So.
Yeah, great. And I would add that we did save some pieces of material from the original hospital building. So we have some ideas we have pieces of marble. The bathroom stalls are separated by pieces of marble. We showed you those that are about this thick and very large. One of them we saved one in its entirety, and it could be the top of a great picnic table. But we also have pieces. There was a lot of damage up here, and vandals would come in and throw these pieces of marble out the window. And we found all these shattered pieces. So we collected a lot of those pieces of marble. We collected some of the glass that was in I think it was a solarium and other things from the hospital. And one of the thoughts we had was maybe there's some art contest or not art contest or something that we can have so that people can take these and make some art that we can share with the community also. So trying to, do the park and other things along with it. So the next question is, what's next? So I know some of that will be up to the town, but for you, the next step is to come up with a final plan. And any thoughts about that?
Well, we're hoping it will be the beginning of July when the town receives the final plan. We're still, as we stated, kind of in the infancy conceptual design portion of everything right now. But within the next week, we'll really start drafting up some more concrete designs, looking at estimating cost and materials for the designs, and seeing really what works best long term, because the future maintenance of the site is very important. We don't want to suggest something that is a pain in the neck long term.
Great. That's a really good point, and I think that's a big concern for Hanson residents. What will any of this cost? What will it mean in the future? What's the maintenance? And our job as a committee has been to really take that into mind as we're looking ahead. So some of the thoughts that we have are applying for grants. There are CPA funds. There are grants from the state. There's the superintendent's residence that's going to go on the market, and the town meeting voted to have that in a fund where we could start to use some of those funds for this. But what I understand, the best way of doing these things, and you've probably seen this in other places, is you do it in phases. Say, this is something that we can start with right here. Let's do this. Let's get the funds for this somehow. And then it's not going to be like, we have this magical park in a year. Is that your understanding too in other places?
That's correct. Yeah, we certainly understand that, all of the things that we envision in these designs are not, you can't implement this in 1 year and say, great, this is completely affordable, we can pull this off in 6 months. This is a long-term vision that we're hoping to give Hanson, and that as a town you can decide and figure out how to move forward. And we'll be proposing some ways that phasing could support that, that 1-2 years in, you implement some of the most important for the town, the most important features, the most important elements. And then moving forward, some of those long goals, you can work towards them. And we're interested in how the design can support your efforts to either qualify for new grants or reach for new funding efforts. So.
Oh, great. So do you have information about funding that we should be tapping, or will that be in there?
I think it's a collaborative effort.
Okay. Because we've done some research and we know some that we can apply for, but there's no shortage of need for having funds to do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we're wrapping up. We have just a couple of minutes left. Are there any?
Well, I think just to touch on the phasing component, it's really what the town sees as priority will play a big role in what we suggest phasing, because we don't want to phase things early on that the town doesn't want and that are expensive, and so they don't touch on these other needs that they've had from the get-go. So that'll be important moving forward.
Yeah. Okay. Any last words that you'd like to say about this project?
This has been such a pleasure. It's a great joy getting to know Hanson, and really, the community meetings have been such an awesome opportunity to see how much people care about this property. To be able to work on a property that everybody is so invested in and really has a strong desire to see move forward and see become public use land where you can have fun events and gather and spend time with your family or with friends. It's an honor to be able to work on a project like that could have such an impact on a place. Yeah.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So we hope you will come back after you're done with your project to see the progress over the years.
Yeah, definitely.
So I can just say for wrapping up that we as a committee will be taking that information in and then trying to see what are the next steps that we can do to make it a reality. So most of what we're doing will have to go through the selectmen and town meeting. So for people who are watching and wondering what's happening, you'll be seeing it as we move along. So I just wanted to thank you both, Alison and Elan, for working on this project, for being here today to share with it with everyone here. And really looking forward to the final project that you submit and sharing that with everyone. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for watching Green Scene today.